But there ain't no way it's SoulCalibur 6 is being put above 1 or 2. Ain't no
Oh, welcome back to the stage of history, stranger.
I've been playing SoulCalibur II this past month, and I was surprised by how many people are still playing this game to this day. Many of them believe that SoulCalibur II is the best in the series. But is it really? People play fighting games for many different reasons, but I can generally split them into two groups. And by that, I want to clarify what this video is and isn't. The first group like fighting games for their style, things like the story, character design, and the overall setting of the game. The other group, which may or may not include pro players, enjoys these games for their substance, how deep the mechanics are, how balanced the roster is, and what kinds of playstyles exist. For this video, I tried my best to cover both aspects. I learned a lot from pro players in SoulCalibur Discord servers and trained very hard, but in the end, I can only fight the ultra hard difficulty against the computer or my professional button mashing cousins, so keep that in mind. But as I said in my Soul Blade retrospective, you can't talk about this series without mentioning its story.
And I have a lot to say, especially as someone with little to no nostalgia for PS2 era Soul series.
With both of these aspects in mind, we can answer the question, is SoulCalibur II the best in the series? As always, I'll go through every character with their stories, and I'll explain everything else as we go on.
I'm PuriX, and this is the ultimate SoulCalibur II retrospective.
Character endings in fighting games are mostly non-canon, and that is the case with SoulCalibur. Because of that, we only discovered the true ending of the game when we play the next entry. So what I'm going to start with here is both a closure to the previous game and a prologue to this one. There was once a misguided boy with a thirst for revenge known as Siegfried. He was seeking a sword known by many names: the ultimate sword, the valiant sword, the hero sword. But to him, it was the sword of vengeance. His father, Knight Frederick, a kind and just man from the Holy Roman Empire, was killed on his way back home as he was fleeing from the crusade. Siegfried, now a bandit leader, was ambushing fleeing knights for loot. Little did he know that on that day, he would decapitate his own father's head. They say ignorance is bliss, but that wasn't the case for Siegfried. At that very moment, he descended into madness. He completely denied what he had done and convinced himself that some imaginary murderer had killed his father. He feared this murderer so much that he believed he needed a legendary sword to stand a chance against him. Thus began his quest for the fabled Soul Edge. When he finally found it at a Spanish port lying on the lifeless body of a pirate known as Cervantes, he reached out to claim it, but the body suddenly ignited in flames and began to move. Siegfried fought and defeated this undead form known as Inferno, the physical manifestation of Soul Edge. He then claimed the sword as his prize, but it was all for nothing. Soul Edge took over Siegfried's body and transformed him into an entity known as Nightmare. When this happened, a bright light burst into the sky. The people who saw it thought little of it, but it marked the beginning of a catastrophe, an incident known as the Evil Seed. Across the world, people became possessed. They turned on each other, killing to feed Soul Edge with souls, and the now mind-controlled Siegfried was promised that he could see his father again if he fueled the sword with enough souls. To harvest more, he gathered henchmen and an army of red-eyed monsters. He even formed a new band called Schwarzstorm. This group consisted of a tall, seductive woman, a monstrous child, and a hulking lizard. The Evil Seed had many victims who never recovered from their madness, but one of them was different. A young man named Kilik, an orphan raised by monks, also fell under his control. He wielded a sacred staff called Kali-Yuga at the time and went on a rampage. His swan sister Xianghua, another inheritor of a sacred relic called Dwapar Yuga, discovered that her relic could repel the curse. She gave it to Kilik only to fall under the curse's influence herself. Kilik came to his senses with no memories of his actions, but suddenly he was attacked by his sister and fellow monks. They were his only family and he was forced to kill them to survive. Later, Kilik was saved and trained by an old man named Edgemaster. He discovered that his body was still corrupted and that only the Dwapar Yuga, the relic given to him by his sworn sister, was keeping him sane. To save himself and adventure, he set out to destroy Soul Edge, the true cause of it all. Along the way, he encountered a pirate named Maxi, who sailed with a cheerful crew. Kilik intended to use Maxi's ship to continue his journey, but he drew the attention of Schwarzstorm. The group was attacked. Maxi survived, but his entire crew was slaughtered. Seeking vengeance, Maxi joined Kilik's quest. Soon after, they were joined by a third companion, a young girl named Xianghua, a fighter disguised as an opera singer. She was on a mission to retrieve Soul Soul Edge for her Emperor, unaware of the sword's evil nature. The three journeyed together until they finally reached Nightmare's stronghold. Through their attack, Maxi stayed behind to fend off monsters and face Astaroth, the one who massacred his crew. Meanwhile, Kilik and Xianghua fought their way to Nightmare and eventually confronted Inferno, the true form of Soul Edge. At that moment, Xianghua's sword, a keepsake from her mother, transformed into SoulCalibur, the polar opposite of Soul Edge. Her weapon, secretly the sacred treasure Krita Yuga, revealed its true form. With SoulCalibur, they defeated Soul Edge. The weapon then remained behind in the vortex of evil to suppress the cursed blade's power. With Nightmare defeated, the group searched for Maxi but found no trace of him. Believing peace had returned, they went their separate ways. These were the events 4 years before SoulCalibur II takes place. In those years, people resumed their normal lives, unaware that this peace was only an illusion. Soul Edge had been shattered and its fragments were scattered across the world. Those who found them carried pieces imbued with its dark power and unknowingly spreading its corruption. Soon people began searching for the evil sword itself, and Soul Edge was waiting to bring about another apocalypse. The story of SoulCalibur II revolves around these fragments and the many who seek them. As stated by one of the later developers of SoulCalibur, Raphaël is the true protagonist of SoulCalibur II. So, we start in France, where he was born. Raphaël Sorel was born the head of his noble family during an age of turmoil. The young master had to endure scheming nobles and a somewhat treacherous family. He grew up studying medicine and swordsmanship to distract himself from all the chaos. France was in the middle of a religious strife and Raphaël was left-handed. This is not mentioned in the game, but at the time being left-handed was considered evil by the Catholic Church. I think the fact that he remained a left-handed swordsman could be seen as a sign of his strong and stubborn character. Even with all of those challenges, his quick decision-making and execution skills helped him survive. Everything was going smoothly until the evil seed incident occurred. One of his family members fell under Soul Edge's influence, and Raphaël made a critical mistake because of that. It's not further explained, at least not in this game, but apparently it was so severe that his family immediately sold him out to his enemies to save themselves. He ran away to a poor town and hid in the slums. Accustomed to a privileged life, Raphaël could not bear the cold and hunger. He would have died if not for the help of a little girl named Amy. As shown in the game's opening, she saved him from his pursuers. For Amy, this was a simple act of kindness, but for Raphaël, raised among power-hungry nobles, it was the first time he experienced genuine kindness and the first time he felt indebted to someone. Amy soon became an irreplaceable presence in his life, something like a daughter or even a little sister. She became his entire drive to live. But his view of the world grew darker. He began to hate nobles for their selfishness and commoners for their hopelessness. To him, the world was full of empty people living meaningless lives. Convinced that the chaos of war was no place for a meaningful life, Raphaël took away Amy from the poverty-stricken town to build a better future for her. Living like a survivor in the slums for 10 years gave Amy a tenacious will, but it also erased any sense of hope she had for the future. Assuming a false name, Raphaël befriended a rich noble. He employed his cunning to gain the trust of the Lord and those around him. When the opportunity arose, Raphaël poisoned the noble and spread the word that the Lord had left on a long journey. One day while reading in his mansion's library, he found notes about Evil Seed, the very events that changed his life. He soon made a connection to Soul Edge. That's when he formed a plan. What if such a sword were thrust into the hands of the pathetic nobles? They would undoubtedly fight feverishly for the weapon and ultimately destroy themselves. Commoners would be unfortunate victims of the war, but their existence mattered little, for they were no better off than dead. He was willing to sacrifice countless lives if it meant securing a meaningful future for Amy. Raphaël is a complicated character. He's still evil for disregarding human life, calling commoners dead weight and nobles worthless, but his plan is interesting because he doesn't want to carry it out himself. He's a broken man, one you might think or even hope could still be fixed. Raphaël also has one of the flashiest and coolest movesets in the entire roster. I just hope that extended to his gameplay as well, but he's actually considered one of the worst characters in the game. To explain that, I'll give a quick rundown of SoulCalibur II's gameplay. I may use terms that sound like gibberish to casual fighting game fans, so I'll put a small guide in the description if you get confused. Unlike most fighting games, SoulCalibur features free 360-degree movement through its 8-way run system. These directions are described using Numpad notation. Since opponents can move around freely, you need a way to counter it. Horizontal attacks, known as A attacks, cover that. If your opponents duck under them, you have a slower but more powerful vertical attack called B. Then there's K, a kick that varies depending on the character, and G, which guards against enemy attacks. It's Sounds simple, but none of it works well with Raphael, because he performs all 3 attack types worse than the rest of the roster. His A doesn't always track to his right side, the very thing it's supposed to do, his kicks and launches are slower than most, and his parries and dodges are unreliable. Playing him at higher difficulty or in competitive matches requires much more effort than with other characters because he does almost everything worse. However, he does have one saving grace, 3BB, a fast attack that can transition into other moves. If you catch your opponent with it on counter hit, you can pull off flashy combos without being punished. Still, I had a lot of trouble using Raphael in arcade mode, especially against the final boss, Inferno. So, at stage 7 of arcade mode, you fight your destined rival with a short cutscene. It's an upgrade from SoulCalibur 1, but it's still weak. Raphael's rival is Nightmare himself. After defeating him, Raphael says,
"You have failed! But I will not."
Afterwards, every character performs a shared animation. They turn to see the world around them turn into hell. Then Inferno, with Soul Edge floating in front of him and SoulCalibur stabbed into his head, prepares for battle and your character mutters some unique dialogue. SoulCalibur II's Inferno is one of the worst bosses in the series. Like in SoulCalibur 1, he borrows movesets from the other characters, but this time he has more health, switches styles twice as you reduce his health, and bleeds particle effects every time you hit him. You basically fight him blindfolded. Most of my footage is just me fighting Inferno and getting my ass kicked because I can't see shit. Anyway, after defeating him, you see a cutscene where Inferno disappears and only SoulCalibur remains. Your character then delivers a unique line and looks to the side. Depending on the character, you may see Soul Edge, SoulCalibur, both, or nothing at all. But most of these variations make little sense as we're going to see with other characters later on. Finally, you get a 2D slideshow ending, just like SoulCalibur 1, which is a big disappointment. In Raphael's ending, he brings Soul Edge back home, vowing not to be possessed by it, just as he promised Nightmare after defeating him. The ending concludes, no one knows what was spared and what was destroyed during that time. This is the 5th time a character has taken Soul Edge home. León did it, Arthur did it, Voldo did it, and most importantly, Huang did it. He wanted to save his country, the most noble cause of them all, yet even he was corrupted by the sword. I'm not saying Raphael will fail because Huang also did, but his path almost certainly ends in bloodshed. I like Raphael a lot. He's more complex than Siegfried in Soul Blade or Kilik and his friends in SoulCalibur. He's neither completely evil nor morally good. He's also older than the typical protagonist, being 32 years old. I also like his costumes. His main outfit doesn't really look like something a noble would wear, but its dominant purple color conveys nobility. His second outfit, complete with a goatee, fits his false identity. And his third is my favorite. A truly noble look with a tiny ponytail and a bare right hand, as if he just stepped into a duel. We started strong with our first newcomer, so let's continue with our second, Talim. As Spain expanded into the Philippines, Western influence began to erode local traditions. A local tribe in the area hid themselves in a mountain village. They were devoted to the wind deity and lived in harmony with nature. Talim was born into this tribe and was raised as the last priestess of the wind. Presumably, the wind worked like a radar for them, allowing them to receive news through it, and Talim was the last one who could use this ability. When the evil seed incidents happened, Talim was reading the wind as always, when she suddenly collapsed after sensing the screams, hopelessness, and madness from faraway places. She didn't know the reason at the time, but 4 years later, when she reached 15 years old, something happened that reminded her of that day. Although her tribe had isolated themselves, they couldn't completely stop merchants from entering their village. One day, a merchant arrived with a strange metal shard he called a vitality charm, but it was actually a shard of Soul Edge. Talim immediately sensed the shard and realized it was connected to the day she had collapsed, so she decided to go on a journey to resolve the issue of these shards. The elders of her village initially disagreed since she was the last remaining priestess and they didn't want her to become corrupted, but her parents encouraged her to go and see the world for herself. Thus she left on an adventure to stop the shards from spreading throughout the world. Just like Raphael, Talim has a unique fighting style thanks to her elbow blades. In my experience, her A attacks are excellent with standouts like 3A and 3-3A. Her 6B plus K is also useful when you want to close the distance instance. She's fast and easy to play, though her kicks are not the best, and I often struggle to keep up pressure on downed opponents. Overall, her gameplay matches her Wind deity backstory with elegant movements that sometimes feel like a dance. At stage 7, we face our destined opponent Yun Sung, whom we'll talk about later. He's apparently searching for Soul Edge and Talim wants to stop him. Nowhere in the game or character profiles did I find any explanation of how their paths crossed, which is a shame. After the fight, we face Inferno, and upon his defeat, Talim looks at the sky and smiles as the wind corrects his course. Her story is a bit too light-hearted for SoulCalibur, and at only 15 years old, she feels very young for the cast. Still, I didn't dislike her character. It seems SoulCalibur II wanted to balance the first newcomer's complicated personality with a simpler and younger hero. When it comes to costumes, Talim always looked very similar to me throughout the series, maybe because of the color palette. The hat is missing here, which I think was a good addition in later games. Her second costume feels like something she'd wear at her temple, and her third looks like her priestess attire. Now we reach Yun Sung. Just like Maxi in SoulCalibur 1, I'm quite biased towards him because Hwang is replaced this time, and for no good reason. Our story starts in Korea, where Japan is invading and two nations are at war. Yun Sung was a young man training under Master Sung Hang Myung, also known as the worst father in SoulCalibur series. He was talented, albeit a bit rash, and idolized another older student, Hwang Sung Kyung. But as time went on, this admiration turned into one-sided rivalry. Time passed, and during the events of Soul Blade, Hwang went to find Soul Edge, or as they called it, the Sword of Salvation, to help with the war. But as we know from the events of SoulCalibur 1, he returned empty-handed. Yun was happy to see him and wanted to fight him to prove that he was better than him. But Hwang was a changed man. He no longer fought about personal goals. He only wanted to protect his country, so he joined the Coast Guard and turned down Yun's request for a duel. Yun was so disappointed and depressed by this. One day, soon Mina, the daughter of his master, saw him troubled and gave him a sacred sword which apparently could show one's deepest thoughts in its reflection. Gazing into the blade, Yun realized it was selfish to want a reckless duel with Hwang while the country was at war. He thought he should achieve something greater, like finding the Sword of Salvation himself, succeeding where Hwang had failed, and in doing so, winning his respect while protecting his homeland. That's still quite selfish in my opinion. Yun Sung then set off on the same route Hwang once traveled, where he fought Maxi. That's a bit random, but it does confirm Hwang's destined battle in SoulCalibur 1. Along his journey, Yun discovered that Soul Edge was actually evil, but he didn't care.
I don't care if it's evil.
Proving my point that he was just a selfish boy. And his flaws as a character don't stop there, because he's considered by almost everyone to be the worst character in the entire roster. Personally, I had the most trouble playing as him. He's bad at pretty much everything and doesn't do a single thing better than anyone else. At least Raphael had 3 BB as his saving grace. This brat has nothing. At stage 7, we fight the same battle as in Talim's arcade route. The cutscene is the same for distant battles, but the win code is unique. In Yun's case, it's
Sorry,
Win.
but I have to go.
Then I got destroyed by Inferno for an hour until I somehow managed to beat him out of nowhere. Upon his victory, Yun
Did
says,
you feel my true strength?
when he goes to pick up Soul Edge, he suddenly stops and returns home empty-handed because he believed in himself after his journey. Oh man. This guy mixes the worst qualities of Sun Mina and Hwang. He's terrible as a fighter, his design has no defining features in either of his costumes, and you could basically recreate him in SoulCalibur 6 Creator's Soul. On top of that, he just came out of nowhere. But unlike Yun Sung, our next character had already been foreshadowed in both Soul Blade and SoulCalibur 1. She's Sophitia's little sister, Cassandra Alexandra. Her story begins when a mysterious Asian woman, also known as the classic Gunnar bait of SoulCalibur, brought an injured Sophitia home. Cassandra saw fragments of metal inside her sister's body as the woman removed them. After Sophitia regained consciousness, she spoke about her adventures, describing how she had destroyed an evil sword with the help of Hephaestus, the god of smithing. No one believed her except her sister Cassandra. All was going well until Sophitia disappeared right before her marriage, only to return years later speaking once again of her journeys to wipe out evil. She eventually married a blacksmith named Ruthian, had 2 children, and lived a happy life. But that peace was also short-lived. When Cassandra visited Sophitia's house, she looked at the sleeping faces of her sister's young children and jokingly said, "Fira, Patroclus, listen carefully. If you don't hold on tight to your mother, she might run off again to carry out God's duties." Sophitia laughed at this and told her she could no longer hear the gods. That's when Ruffian came home carrying a strange metal scrap. The children woke to greet their father, but when they saw the shard, they began fighting over it with greedy and unnatural intensity, making poor Sophitia collapse for the 3rd time in SoulCalibur's history. Cassandra had enough. She picked up the shard and began shouting at her sister. She then stormed off to the Hephaestus shrine, demanding to know why the god would put so much pressure on Sophitia. After exhausting herself, she suddenly saw the weapon Sophitia had used years ago to defeat Soul Edge in the shrine. She picked it up and saw the shard reacting to it. Realizing Soul Edge was still alive, she decided she wouldn't let her sister shoulder the burden anymore. Distrusting the so-called god Hephaestus, she took up the sword herself and began hunting Soul Edge. Cassandra is certainly a character. She's rash and hot-headed, and you're never her type.
You're definitely not my type.
Her personality is reflected in her fighting style as well. She shares moves with Sophitia, but plays far more aggressively. I was never a Sophitia expert, but in my experience her AA was fast, she had several strings that could lead into mix-up situations, her unblockable covered a lot of ground, her counter looked amazing, her 66k launcher felt stronger than her 3B, and her voice acting sounded like constant mid-fight trash talk. At stage 7, we fight a new character who looks like an eye inside a golem, Charade. The game gives no explanation for this encounter, and even Cassandra seems confused. After that, we waste time fighting Inferno. She then watches over SoulCalibur and her ending plays, and SoulCalibur has nothing to do with it. Her ending is essentially, I vanquished evil. Honestly, her backstory was very interesting, but her ending was nothing special. This is a recurring issue with SoulCalibur II. Many endings are as bad or worse than SoulCalibur 1. As for her costumes, her main outfit captures her tomboyish personality perfectly. It feels a little bit anime than something Greek inspired, but I don't mind it at all. Her second costume has a green color palette and longer hair, but it's easily her most forgettable one. Her third is a reference to The Legend of Valkyrie, an old game made by Namco. I actually missed this in my Soulblade retrospective, where Sophitia's ultimate weapon was also a reference to the same title, so apologies for that. You're now finished with our 4 new poster characters from SoulCalibur II. Let's see how our poster trio from SoulCalibur 1 are doing, starting with Kilik. The prologue I started with was taken from Kilik's profile, so there's little left to tell here. One day as he was meditating, Kilik sensed an evil aura. He discovered that Soul Edge wasn't truly destroyed. He thought to himself that if the sword couldn't be destroyed physically, like they tried in SoulCalibur 1, maybe he could absorb its evil energy through his staff Kali Yuga, and then slowly purify it. But the thing is, it's been 4 years since the events of SoulCalibur 1, and he couldn't even purify the demon inside himself, let alone Soul Edge. He didn't even have Duopar Yuga with him anymore, as it was shattered in the fight against Nightmare, but he went for it anyway. When we reach stage 7 with him, we're faced with Xianghua, and he tells her about his plan. Let's just say they have a disagreement. This whole fight would have felt way more impactful if it had a bit more fanfare. We then fight Inferno, and Kilik graces us with this beautiful line.
Listen, can you hear my soul scream?
Then we get his in-game cutscene. Kilik was looking for Soul Edge, but he sees SoulCalibur for some reason, which only adds to this game's inconsistencies, cause SoulCalibur is nowhere to be seen in his final ending. And in his ending, he does exactly what he said. He channels the evil energy into Kali Yuga and disappears into some cave until it's purified. Well, that was terrible. But his fighting style isn't. This guy played horribly in SoulCalibur. He had a long staff and yet he felt like he had no range. In this game, you can actually feel the range on some of his attacks. Or maybe I just got better after playing fighting games for 3 months. My favorite moves are 6B, 4B plus K, and 2-2B. His old kicks such as 6B plus K are still useful too. Kilik is best when he fights from range, so you should try to play to his strength and avoid letting the enemy get too close. That only leaves Kilik's costumes. His first has the same color palette as his SoulCalibur 1, but this time with a red coat instead of pants. I actually like it a lot. His second also looks inspired by SoulCalibur 1, but I'm not a big fan. Next up, we have Xianghua, the little girl who actually destroyed Soul Edge 4 years ago. She had one of the longer stories in SoulCalibur 1, so if you want the full details, you can check my SoulCalibur 1 retrospective. What you need to know for this game is that Xianghua came from a lineage of swordmasters and served as the royal guard of the Ming dynasty. Her mother gifted her a sword called Krita Yuga, which later turned out to be a sacred relic that had been stolen long ago from some temple. Xianghua was tasked by the Emperor to find Soul Edge, which they actually called the Hero's Sword. But when she found it, she discovered it was evil. That's when her sword transformed into SoulCalibur, the polar opposite of Soul Edge, and the rest is history. As we know, she defeated Soul Edge but lost the sword her mother gave her, so she returned to the Emperor empty-handed. She also made the mistake of not telling him that she found Soul Edge and that it was evil. As a result, she was demoted from her royal guard rank. Everything was fine until one day the Emperor suddenly suddenly attacked one of his own forts. It turned out that the search team had discovered Soul Edge and brought it there, but the castle's lord refused to hand it over to the emperor. Believing this to be a revolt, the emperor sieged the castle. This didn't make sense to Xianghua, because she thought Soul Edge had already been destroyed. While searching the remains of the fort under emperor's orders, she found shards of Soul Edge at play. She felt a heavy guilt. If she had told the emperor the truth about the sword, maybe none of this would have happened. Carrying that burden, she resigned from her imperial duty and set out to crush every last fragment of Soul Edge. Xianghua never ceases to amaze me. There's always something interesting going on with her story, but when it comes to gameplay, oh boy. Not only she's improved, she's considered to be the best character in the game. Her 2-2B, which I really liked in SoulCalibur 1, is back and better than ever. In my experience, it's safe to spam most of the time and it comes out very fast. That's kind of the thing with this character. Her attacks have low startup frames, or in SoulCalibur terms, impact frames. You can punish enemies very easily with Xianghua, and she's incredibly fun to play. At stage 7, we encounter Kilik with the same cutscene. She stops him from doing his thing, then goes on to fight Inferno. In her ending, she reunites with SoulCalibur and learns to never lie again. See, we have character development for once. Her first two costumes share the same color palette as her SoulCalibur 1 ones, unlike her third, which just looks odd to me. With its stark black and white design, it doesn't feel like something Xianghua would wear. She's more like a clown than a goth girl. Next, we have the bane of my existence, Maxi. You know I hate this guy, but you told me he gets better in later games, so let's see if you were right. He acted like some JoJo-looking side character in events of SoulCalibur 1 and stayed behind to help his friends take out Nightmare and also to take revenge on Astaroth. He actually won against him, but then the God of War got mad and swallowed him into the earth. He didn't have a God of War in SoulCalibur 1. Later he was saved by a nearby village. The injuries he suffered on his arms and legs couldn't be fully healed, so he could no longer fight. He was fine with it though, since he grew close to the villagers and started to have a peaceful life there. Most importantly, he got revenge on the one who massacred his crew, and his new friends had destroyed the root of evil. Alas, this is SoulCalibur, so of course 4 years later rumors spread of a huge man with an axe. Astaroth was still alive and Maxi couldn't do anything about it. That's when a village medicine man paid him a visit and told him his body could be cured with an uncommon treatment, but at a price. Maxi accepted the terms, and a few days later he left on his journey to kill Astaroth with a cured body. At stage 7 we face Astaroth. We see the coolest in-game cutscene so far, and it's the first distant opponent that actually makes sense. After Maxi's sweet revenge, we still have to fight Inferno, but sticking with the story, Maxi doesn't even remember Soul Edge. He only had Astaroth on his mind.
My revenge is complete.
But after the fight, he remembers everything and looks over to see SoulCalibur. I really should stop taking these last scenes seriously. He then mourns his old friends and decides to return to his new ones. To be honest, he is my second favorite character story-wise so far. He feels a bit more consistent than the others. As for costumes, I like how he kept his open jacket with his chest exposed, but I still prefer his SoulCalibur 1 design with the sleeves. His second costume though is way better. I know I once said it looks like a Creator Soul outfit, but I actually like it here. One thing I want to point out is that most costumes in this game have unique hairstyles, and this mullet fusion looks good in my opinion. As for gameplay, I still play him by mashing buttons, and I think he is the best choice if you want to go that route. And if that doesn't work, spamming 6B plus K still works for me. Maxi kinda redeemed himself in my book, but can Astaroth do the same? In SoulCalibur 1, we were told that Pangea, some evil god, ordered Kunpaitko, the high priest of Figal Kestimus, to obtain Soul Edge, so this priest made a golem named Astaroth to do so. In SoulCalibur II, they changed the whole perspective. Pangea was actually Ares, the god of war, and he was a rival of Hephaestus who wanted Soul Edge for himself to bring chaos to the world. Astaroth wasn't just a normal golem loyal to his creator Kunpaitko. He was possessed by Ares' agent, Care. So the ending we see in SoulCalibur 1, where Astaroth kills his creator, who himself wanted the sword, is not because Astaroth is his own character, but because he was controlled by Ares all along. This makes Astaroth even weaker as a character. He's not just just a jobber now, he's a puppet. In SoulCalibur 1, Astaroth didn't fight with Nightmare because Soul Edge was damaged and incomplete, so he joined him instead, and for 3 years he harvested souls with his axe to power up Soul Edge before taking it by force from Nightmare. But when the time was right, Maxi attacked their fort and killed Astaroth. As punishment, Ares made the earth swallow Maxi, and we know the rest. But as for Astaroth, this time Ares made him whole with no human involvement. He was fused with the blood of the bodies around him and shards of Soul Edge. So the Astaroth we have now is an improved version. But I don't know why his head looks like an egg, and he's even more like a stripper. I guess Ares has a type. Astaroth then restarts his quest to obtain Soul Edge.
What?
In stage 7, he fights Maxi and defeats him, then confronts Inferno. He then picks up Soul Edge, fuses with it, and starts fulfilling his master's wishes. If you know me, you know I hate this character, and I hate him even more now. And don't let me start on his costumes. His first is a more naked version of his main costume from SoulCalibur 1 with an egg-shaped head. His third is like a buffed Voldo with zombie-like skin, but his second is not bad. It's like some jobber from Berserk. All of these costumes make him even less unique in my opinion. Just like Yon, he doesn't have a defining feature in his design. At this point, any character with an axe could be Astaroth. When it comes to playstyle, he's still about hitting hard and command grabs. He has such good range that you may just stand there and eat those charge moves. You just have to stop the enemy from getting close to you. Yet if they do, guard impacts are here to help. It's a parry system unique to Soul series since Soul Blaze. They're a bit more simplified here compared to SoulCalibur 1, which I think was necessary, even though it kinda got nerfed. To parry high and mid, you use 6G, and to parry mid and low, you use 4G. Actually, 6G is called repel and 4G is called parry. I mentioned all this because Astaroth benefits a lot from guard impacts. Back in SoulCalibur 1, after getting parried, your only option was to parry back, which could lead to a chain of guard impacts. But in SoulCalibur 2, you can actually guard using 2G right before you're about to get hit after getting parried or repelled, breaking the chain. But the thing is, you can't guard or parry command grabs, which just happens to be Astaroth's specialty. To continue with our Schwarzstone gang, let's take a look at our previous waifu, Isabella Ivy Valentine. She had a hell of an introduction in SoulCalibur 1 with some blemishes here and there, like not realizing she was working for Nightmare all this time. But what's important is that in that game, she had two important revelations. First, that her father was Cervantes, and second, that her sword Ivy, yeah, it has the same name as her, was made with a fragment of Soul Edge. She was basically tainted by Soul Edge in both body and weapon. After the events of SoulCalibur 1, she ran away to her home and locked herself up. She wanted to destroy her sword but couldn't bring herself to do so, since it wasn't just the sword that had a piece of Soul Edge in it, that evil presence was in her blood as well. After some time, she accepted who she was and decided to change her blade's name again, this time to Valentine, her foster family's name. She's very creative. With a new resolve, she set out to destroy all the remaining fragments of Soul Edge, and she was ready to do anything to achieve that goal, even to spill innocent blood. Call me a monster, a demon if you must. I'll be happy to be called those names if it is the price I must pay to eliminate the existence of the evil blade. At stage 7, we face Cervantes, Ivy's father and the previous owner of Soul Edge. We also get a very neat cutscene as their weapons react to each other because both contain shards of Soul Edge. After the fight, Ivy tells her father that she will join him someday in hell. It's so sad that she already sees herself as a monster. After destroying Inferno, she lives her life in solitude, withering away like a flower and ending her cursed bloodline with only her sword as her witness. How can someone even hate this character? She's perfect.
But you already knew that.
And I don't mean just her story, her playstyle has improved since SoulCalibur 1 by a lot, and she's my favorite in SoulCalibur 2 so far. Her whole gimmick was to be a zoner, but they executed her playstyle terribly back then. Here she has many options to keep her opponent at a distance. What I like to do is to use 2-2-B to launch and get into one of the stances, then use A to attack horizontally and enter another stance, then use A or B according to the situation. Her 2-1-4-B is also pretty good to use and leads into the same stances. She also has some shared moves with her father. This is something SoulCalibur 2 has done superbly so far. They made the gameplay of the cast truly diverse. Her costumes are a chef's kiss as well. I mean, she's a gender-bent Virgil. What else could you ever want from this world? Not to mention all the concept parts of her costumes that didn't make it into the game look amazing as well. We've done the henchman. Now it's time for the leader, Nightmare. Most of what happened to this character I already covered in the prologue, so let's continue from there. After being defeated by Kilik and Xianghua in SoulCalibur 1, Nightmare was thrown into some kind of a void, but he eventually came out with an incomplete Soul Edge in his hand, which is not really explained in the game. Nightmare, or should I say Siegfried, regained parts of his humanity as Soul Edge was weaker now. Soon he realized how many people he had killed, including his own father. It's funny that so far we've had 2 non-canon endings for this character where he realized he was the one who did the deed. But the brat Siegfried we knew in Soul Blade was no more. He actually felt guilty. He tried to get as far as he could from society, but the poor boy would wake up to a sight of killed people every day as the sword took control of his body. As time passed and more souls were harvested by Soul Edge, he lost what little control he had. In the end, Siegfried was lost again and Nightmare was seeking Soul Edge's shattered pieces. In stage 7 we fight Raphael. He mocks Nightmare and tells him he's weak for the sword. Upon defeating him, Nightmare actually spares Raphael and tells him to go away. After beating Inferno, we see both SoulCalibur and Soul Edge in his in-game cutscene, which again doesn't mean anything, but his actual ending is so heartbreaking. He actually resists Soul Edge's power. He then finds a crevasse running deep into the earth and goes inside. He then destroys the path leading into it and vows to guard the sword so no one can ever reach it again. He also vows to never sleep. That's what I do to create these videos, so please support my channel with a like, subscribe, and comment your favorite waifu or husbando. Just don't do it if it's Astaroth because I will not like those comments, but I will reply to every one of them. Anyway, when it comes to gameplay, Nightmare is another contender for the best character in the game, and in my experience, he is. His 3B can basically end the game. I even played against real people, albeit they had the brain of a monkey, but they couldn't do anything against this move. Basically, when you hold B while inputting 3B, you enter a stance after launching your opponent. Then you can hit B again to slam them to the ground, then rinse and repeat. If you miss, which is rare since you have as much range as a zoner like Ivy, you can still input A to do a horizontal attack to catch sidesteps, or push K to hit enemies who got too close to you. It's as simple as that. I even finished the single player mode with this. Aside from that, he has a hell sweep with 8-way run plus K, a move with AGA, which for the longest time I thought was just someone's name in SoulCalibur Discord. His 6-6B can catch enemies off guard, and he has more range than it looks on his grabs. When it comes to his costumes, his main one is basically an upgraded version of his SoulCalibur 1 look, with the helmet being a mix between his 1P and 2P. His second outfit, I believe, represents the moment he returned from the void, and honestly, it's one of my all-time favorite designs. He even gets his Soul Blade ultimate weapon here, which might be a hint that it was an imperfect form of Soul Edge. His third costume is supposed to be a callback to his Soul Blade outfit, but without the chainmail, it just feels wrong. His hair looks good though, but it's not as long as mine, because I'm bald. Next, let's take a look at Cervantes. He has a long-ass profile, basically just to make an excuse for him to be resurrected, and it makes no sense. But it already didn't make sense in SoulCalibur 1, where he got brought back to life by Nightmare as a human. Here he looks like his Soul Blade counterpart. So, after turning into Hellfire in Soul Blade, only ashes of him remained with a bunch of Soul Edge shards scattered around, I guess. He then got resurrected by Nightmare with reasons not explained. At first he didn't have any memories, but as time passes, he gets them back. He then hunts shards of Soul Edge and starts creating a weapon with them. He then upgrades it as he collects more shards and absorbs great souls. He's not as broken as he was in SoulCalibur 1, but he's still pretty fun. He got an air grab which looks amazing. His 3B can launch the enemy very high in the sky. His 6-6K is good for keep outs, and he can even cancel his unblockable into a quick cheap attack, something unique only to him. But overall, he feels much slower than his SoulCalibur 1 counterpart, which is made up for by his crazy damage. He has combos that a casual like me could never do because they require scary words like just frames. But Mr. Headcheese was kind enough to show me, and because he's a Cervantes main himself, let's throw something extra in here. SoulCalibur II is a pretty safe game. Most launchers and lows have low recovery frames, making it hard to punish attacks on block or even on whiff. To make matters even more safe, there's a bug in this game called step guard. See me doing this sidestep and then blocking at the end? It may look like I'm guarding at the last moment, but I'm actually guarding the whole way through. If the enemy comes at me with some A's, I'm safe. So movement in this game is king, and if you watch this game at high levels, you'll see two opponents poking at each other until one of them finally makes a mistake. So I hope I've done my mentor justice in explaining what the meta of this game is, and I hope he ignores the fact that I just trashed his favorite character's plot. Anyway, at stage 7 we face Ivy and then Inferno. In his ending, he regains his immortality, at least they remember that much, and the world slips into darkness. I'll be honest, I did not enjoy Cervantes in this game. He's been going downhill since Soul Blade, and I don't think he's going to be the only one. His overall look and costumes are a downgrade too. He looks so good in SoulCalibur 1, but here he looks short for some reason, and his second costume is awful, as if it was designed by some NetherRealm designer, with all the unnecessary, meaningless and cluttered texture work, plus a weird hairstyle. Let's do a double date next with Voldo and Yoshimitsu. In SoulCalibur 1, Yoshimitsu traveled west to find Soulish for revenge, and in his non-canon ending, he absorbed its energy into his sword before creating a band of chivalrous thieves. Here, only the energy absorption part carries over. He never even found Nightmare, and after 4 years, he still hasn't formed his band. Since his blade, which Yoshimitsu named after himself, absorbed Soulish's negative power, it constantly needed purification. One day, Yoshimitsu fell asleep during the process, and that's when Voldo snatched it, mistaking it for the actual Soulish. From there, Yoshimitsu wandered in search of his sword, helping people along the way. Eventually, he stumbled on Virtue's money pit, where he recovered Yoshimitsu and even found the Soulish fragment resting on a throne. This fragment reignited his hunt for the cursed sword. Meanwhile, Voldo had been hoarding anything related to Soulish, stacking shards and fragments on his master's throne, and that's pretty much it for Voldo. Yoshimitsu lost the character development he had from SoulCalibur 1, and Voldo just repeated his Soulblade behavior. They share a distant battle at stage 7 where Voldo crawls around like Spider-Man, while Yoshimitsu delivers some actual dialogue. In Yoshimitsu's ending, he finally establishes his bandit group. As for Voldo, he feels both Soul Edge and SoulCalibur in his in-game cutscene, but it amounts to nothing as his Soulblade ending gets recycled for the 3rd time, this time without even a Virtue sketch. Costume-wise, Yoshimitsu's outfits don't work for me, but at least they added his mechanical arm. Voldo's 1st and 3rd costume missed the mark because they ignore his signature asymmetry, though his 2nd one with the mask and nice claw physics earns a pass. Gameplay-wise, Yoshimitsu was nerfed but remained powerful. His pogo stick move is no longer unblockable, but he gained more of his Tekken moves. I personally relied a lot on 3A into 3B, while 4KB also worked well. His 1KKKK kicks were nerfed, but 1AAA punches are good. For Voldo, he plays well as a masher. If you map B+K to a shoulder button and go wild, you can have a good time. His 3K launcher and 3A+Bs are also very effective. And boy oh boy, it gets worse for Mitsurugi and Taki. Yes, another double date. Mitsurugi has always been my main, but that's only because of his playstyle. Because his story keeps getting worse, and here we hit a new low point. In SoulCalibur 1, an important part of his development was already cut. He wasted 3 years chasing Soul Edge with nothing to show for it. Add another 4 years, and in SoulCalibur 2, he only stumbles across a shard by chance. While he was roaming the Ming Empire, he finds an injured man surrounded by assassins. Mitsurugi defeats them, but the man dies, leaving him a Soulish fragment. Mitsurugi wondered why a weapon said to be so powerful could be shattered into pieces. Around the same time, war was brewing under the Emperor, and Mitsurugi was excited. 7 years wasted. He's been chasing Soul Edge since Soulblade with the same reasons, making him feel like a character who finished his arc long ago and now just shows up as a guest character. As for Taki, she didn't even reach Nightmare in SoulCalibur 1 or interact with Ivy, so it's a mystery how Ivy even learned about her father, since it was Taki who told her about him. But to be fair, they are shown fighting in the opening, so even though it's not stated in her profile, maybe they did have some interaction in SoulCalibur 1. In SoulCalibur 2, Taki is hunted by her clan for going rogue and refusing to hand over Mekimaru, a cursed ninjato, to her master Toki. She hoped to balance its power with Soul Edge, but since she never found it, she now seeks to master Mekimaru instead. On her journey, she discovers fragments of Soul Edge that could serve as a new source of energy to do her balancing thing, but at the same time, her clan also showed interest in these shards. Now, should Taki master the cursed blade Mekimaru or extract this evil energy? Or should she stop her crazy former master Toki to get his hands on these shards and Mekimaru? Now, I'm not joking. Her profile ends with what should she do next? I don't know, you tell me. The writing on these two is all over the place, and for no reason, Mitsurugi and Taki are given a destined battle. Might I add, with the worst cutscene in the game.
I've had enough of you.
Haven't you had enough?
Mitsurugi's ending is basically his Soulblade original arcade ending repeated. He shatters Soul Edge, calling it evil, and searches for the true one, which we know doesn't exist anymore because he destroyed it. Taki's ending has her muttering
Demon captured.
then she says it again and off to the east. Their costumes are also not that good. Mitsurugi's main outfit is a slight upgrade over his SoulCalibur 1 look with better looking armor and color palette. His second costume looks like Tekken 4 Jin, which I don't really like, and his third is is a generic samurai outfit, which I actually prefer over his default. Taki, meanwhile, is missing her mask, which is awful. Her SoulCalibur 1 mask was already terrible, and now she doesn't have one at all. Her third is a reference to a character called Voyahime in Bravo Man. Her second is decent and my favorite out of the three. And that's quite funny, because this outfit actually came from a scrap character design meant to replace Taki. Her name was Setsu. Mitsurugi was supposed to get the same treatment with Seidu Nagumo. Honestly, I wish they had gone through with it, because Taki's and Mitsurugi's stories in this game were awful. Gameplay wise, maybe that's an unpopular opinion, but I really dislike Mitsurugi here. His 66BB was moved to 33BB, which is slower to input, and the new 66BB is a terrible replacement that leaves you wide open. His 66K, 4KB, and 2KB are still solid, and his stance attacks are better this time around, but overall, he's not fun for me anymore. Taki, on the other hand, feels largely the same for me. I mainly use 6A plus K and 22A, but like I said before, I just can't play her effectively. So comments down below if you know how to play her, and I may play her better in SoulCalibur 3. Next is Charade. This eye creature is the Mokujin of the game. Charade was born from a man who wanted to escape the war and live a life of adventure. He heard tales about soulage in taverns, and that made him go out and hunt soulage shards, and then keeping them as valuable possessions. Soon rumors began circulating that he had some treasures with him. Shortly after, he was attacked by bandits and got killed. From his body, Charade was born. A creature born from blood that hunts soulage fragments, growing stronger as it devours them, and mirroring the thoughts of those it meets. I don't dislike his design, but I prefer Edge Master every time. His playstyle is basically gambling, since you get a random fighting style each round. In his ending, he becomes one with Soul Edge and lies in wait until another unfortunate soul comes to claim him. We're finished with our arcade roster. The characters we get afterwards are console exclusive, with little to no story. Let's fire them up with Sophitia and Sung Mina. In both of their stories, they just follow the runaway kid. Sophitia goes to find Cassandra, and Sung Mina looks for Yoon Sung. Sophitia really doesn't have anything, but Mina is kind of interesting because this time she's the adult and Yoon is the kid, which is reminiscent of Wang and Mina in older games. Not to mention Yoon's ending is somewhat similar to hers in Soul Blade. In stage 7, Sophitia fights Cassandra, and in her ending, she acknowledges that this time she fought to protect her loved ones rather than being ordered by some god. I put up a poll on my YouTube asking which character people liked more, and while only about 20 people voted, it looks like most of you prefer Sophitia over Cassandra. As for Mina, she finds Yoon on stage 7 and basically gets called old. In her ending, she finds out that Soul Edge is evil and then destroys it. She then goes back home with Yoon. It's pretty disappointing because the same thing happens in both her Soul Blade and SoulCalibur 1 ending, besides Yoon of course. As for their costumes, Sophitia is not my favorite in this game. Every face in SoulCalibur 2 looks weird, but hers is on another level, and her costumes are basically reused from SoulCalibur 1. Her third though is a reference to a game called the Tower of Druaga. The weapon Blue Crystal Rod in Soul Blade was also from this game. Sung Mina has a costume. Her second, like the previous two games, has short hair, and her third is a traditional Korean outfit. For Sophitia, her 66B plus KAB was amazing for me. Her angel step is still neat, and I like her air combo. As for Mina, I still like her way more than Kilik. She still has some of her Soul Blade moves, such as her kicks and 9B plus K, which is pretty unsafe, but I'll use it anyway. Let's now tackle our 3 guest characters and the collab one. So none of these guest characters have a canon story. They basically get transported out of their world and fight Raphael in stage 7. First we have Heihachi from Tekken for PlayStation 2, which is my favorite out of the 3. You basically play Tekken with 3 buttons and you can pretend you're
Main man, sweet.
He doesn't have perfect electrics as far as I know, but he's a cool character to play as. We also have Spawn for Xbox. He's a good looking character, but for some reason the camera freaks out in his intros. He has some flying stances and funny looking kicks, and overall he's my second favorite. If you play the HD version, you can play as both Spawn and Heihachi. We then have our collaboration character, Necrid. He was designed by Todd McFarlane, the one that made Spawn. He was supposed to be one of the older soulish pursuers who got stuck in a void thing and got out of it in SoulCalibur 2. He looks horrible and funny at the same time, and his playstyle is a mix from many of the characters in the roster with all the wrong weapons and Star Wars sound effects. I wonder if that's foreshadowing. To be honest, I like how he plays, but I hate everything else about him. He's still cooler than Astaroth though. At stage 7, you fight Talim with him, and she calls him a human, and after fighting Inferno, he gets back back into the void, never to be seen again. I guess that's his canon ending. Now we get to the fun part. Zelda. Oh, wait, sorry. I've been told this guy is actually called Link. I'm just messing with you. I know who Link is, and I hate him. Not in this game, I mean in general. So let the hot takes begin. I grew up as a Sony kid, and before that, I had a Sega Genesis. It took me a while before getting into Nintendo, and now I even have a Nintendo Switch. Yet The Legend of Zelda is my least favorite series from Nintendo. I just don't get why people like it. From Ocarina of Time to Link to the Past to Breath of Wild, I played them all and I hated every second of it. For a time, I was planning to create a video where I play every N64 game as my last video before giving up on YouTube, but for some reason that I may talk about in the future, I started this series instead. I may still do it one day, but just know that I'm quite biased towards Nintendo. As for Link, I've heard horror stories where pro players get wrecked by this elf kid, and I can't imagine that being true. So I played a couple of matches against my cousin, and he couldn't beat me with any character. But when he chose Link, it was as if I was playing Smash Brothers. This guy has 3 bullshit moves: a bomb, a bow, and a boomerang. He's horrible, but I can't deny how unique he is, and if I wasn't biased, he would have been my favorite guest character. SoulCalibur II was re-released on Switch 2 not too long ago, and many were hoping for a version that included all 3 guest characters in one game. That wasn't the case, but if you want them all together, you can play the modded SoulCalibur II Plus version. We have 3 more characters left with no stories whatsoever: Lizardman, Berserker, and Assassin. Lizardman is kind of horrible. He's a clone of a clone and a clone of a non-clone. He combines both Cassandra and Sophitia, and his moves look funny since he has so few unique animations. The Aeon Calcus we loved is nowhere to be seen because these Lizardmen are generic ones. Berserker is basically a blank muscle man with Rock's moveset. According to SoulCalibur II, the complete official guide, they were created by Evil Seed, but I don't know why all of them are buffed as hell. And Assman is a man with Huang's moveset. According to SoulCalibur II complete official guide, these guys appeared only after Soul Edge was shattered and attacked only those in possession of its shards. Basically, they are jobbers, and for the longest time people thought Assman was actually Huang in disguise. Anyway, I hate them all. They replaced my favorite characters and reduced them to nothingness. Like, when I look into Assassin's eyes, I can see the void. But these characters were mostly used in this game's single-player mode, Weapon Master mode, and boy oh boy, it's horrible. Not as bad as SoulCalibur 1's mission mode, but compared to Soul Edge, it's still a joke. The mode opens with still images of past warriors who sought Soul Edge, while revealing that the blade is man-made. Hey, that's Li Long! For a moment you think you're going to experience an origin story. Instead, you get a fanfiction with the cast cosplaying as random people. And by random, I mean literally. Some NPCs in this game are somewhat randomly selected. They don't even have original stories, because you can clearly see they've been heavily inspired by the actual story of the main cast. Not to mention, most missions have self-contained plots. There are some new challenges compared to SoulCalibur 1, like dungeon stages, which are kind of cool. You also get weapon selection from Soul Blade Pack, with every character having their own version of Soul Edge and a joke weapon, but instead of unlocking them through the story moments, you mostly just buy them in a shop. Also, this mode is kind of a grind. To unlock the 3 bonus characters, you have to work your ass off. I won't waste your time on every detail of this mode, so here's just the general plot. You play as a nameless warrior seeking the Cursed Blade Soul Edge, and you can pick any character you want, even Nightmare, who already has Soul Edge. At first, you train under a mentor named Edgar in Regulus, then meet a random rival, in my case Leon, who was played by Raphaël. As you travel through fictional cities named after stars like Bennett Nash and Neshira, you battle in empty colosseums, babysit kids, and fight legs. But soon you learn of a bigger threat, the Knight Verol, who's breaking the 3 mystical gates sealing Soul Edge. Guided by guardians like Lina and Tristi, you acquire SoulCalibur to oppose Soul Edge, but Verol always stays one step ahead. Along the way, you encounter your rival Leon multiple times, complete sub-chapters, and even travel to a place called Algol. Eventually, you and your rival reach Verol, who merges with Soul Edge and transforms into Inferno. In a final battle in Antares, you defeat him. However, the victory is bittersweet, because history forgets your deeds, remembering only Verol's chaos, while the Cursed Sword's legend continues to haunt the world, waiting for some pirate to grab it and start more chaos. Overall, the gameplay part was fun, and I also liked bullying Edgar when he tried to guard impact me, but this story, as you can see, is nothing nothing special. But let's check some of the weapons and their descriptions, because we actually have quite a bit of material here. They either tell a story related to the character they belong to, or they have neat descriptions that are in some cases surprisingly historically accurate. Some notable ones for me are Korefuji for Mitsurugi, which is shorter and deals more damage than Shishio, but it looks all wrong, and its lore doesn't add up with SoulCalibur 1. Cervantes has an ugly looking Soul Edge, and his cool looking one from Soul Blade is reduced to a wooden replica as a joke weapon. Cassandra has Sophitia's ultimate weapon Valkyrie from Soul Blade. Nightmare has his old Faust from Soul Blade, and he also has SoulCalibur as his ultimate weapon, which is a nice bit of foreshadowing. Maxi has something like Li Long's bladed nunchucks in his kit, as well as Fatibol from SoulCalibur 1. Xianghua has the corrupted SoulCalibur, which we see in the game's title. Yun has Wong's ultimate weapon from Soul Blade, and Astaroth's ultimate weapon was later given to Zasalamel. Seriously, the weapon gallery is one of the better parts of this game, so be sure to check it out if you can. The arcade version of SoulCalibur II came out in 2002 after 14 months of development. It was built on Namco System 246 board, which was essentially PS2 hardware. Producer Hiroaki Toriyama explained that Namco was eager to release SoulCalibur II simultaneously on GameCube, PlayStation 2, and Xbox. He also explained that they essentially treated the console ports as new productions, not mere straight ports like SoulCalibur 1. All three versions ran at full 60 FPS and 480p resolution, with only minor graphical differences. It took roughly 6 months to create the console release, which came out in 2003. The legacy of SoulCalibur II is no joke. In retrospect, it stands as a landmark fighting game of its era. It may not have introduced much to the mechanics of the series, but it refined them to perfection. Walls were added, Soul Charge was smoother to use, iframe sidesteps were introduced, break attacks were added, and characters received overhauled movesets that complemented their playstyles. Beyond gameplay, the character selection menu also got visual changes that made it unique compared to most fighting games. Personally, I like the trash talking part.
Talim.
Are you okay?
So let's get back to our question. Is SoulCalibur II the best game in the series? When it comes to raw gameplay, it's the best in the series so far. Even my monkey brain cousins admitted that this game felt better to play compared to something like SoulCalibur 6. But the single player content, just like SoulCalibur 1, is a downgrade. That also includes the quality of its writing. It's pretty hit or miss. Where Soul Blade had characters going on journeys, finding weapons, and even having 3 endings each, here we only get a handful of decent endings with less production value than a PS1 game. The music is amazing, but we don't have character-specific themes anymore, which is kind of a shame. Also, unlike SoulCalibur 1, we got an opening this time. It's not Soul Blade, but it's a great one. So my answer is no. This game is the way to go if you want to play with others or like to challenge yourself in Weapon Master mode, but you won't get much out of its story. That doesn't mean SoulCalibur 2 is bad, far from it. It just means every SoulCalibur has its own strengths, and for 2, that is its gameplay. I always had this impression that this game is Bandai Namco's favorite SoulCalibur game, cause it's the only one that they released multiple times, and I kinda hated it for it. Now I don't blame them anymore. Just one last thing before I wrap up. What is this logo and why is it back from Soul Blade? With that, we're finished with SoulCalibur 2. It was an enjoyable month and I learned a lot. I should thank all the people on Discord who helped me make this video, and I hope I made them proud, especially Head Cheese. Otherwise, I'm PuriX, and I see you next time on SoulCalibur 3. I heard this one will destroy me and take a lot more time to make a video on, so wish me luck.